Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. Hi guys, welcome back to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I'm Ryan here with my co-host Matt. This is episode 22, and we're delighted to have an excellent guest on the show today. This is a two-time best-selling author of Lions Raised as Lambs, which hit number one in fatherhood, planning, parenting, and men's gender studies. And this guy has interviewed elite leaders, athletes, and dads who face setbacks and self-doubt. Eric Rogell. Eric, we're pumped to have you on the show, brother.
Thanks, guys. Man, listen, I am really, really fired up to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Eric, super pumped. And, just before we went live here, we were sort of joking a little about some audio issues that we were having. So we apologize in advance if that comes through. But, just getting a small snippet before we hit record, I'm feeling like I might not really have to worry about my mic or Ryan's, because I feel like you've got an enormous amount to share and to lay on us. So I might actually just be able to rock back on the outdoor couch here and just listen for the next 40 to 60 minutes, because I don't actually know your story and I'm super pumped to hear about it. So thank you for being on the show. The last couple of weeks particularly, we've had some guests lined up, and for one reason or another it's fallen through. And the way you came about, I think, Ryan, you could probably share a little bit about how this came about, just to sort of share how is Eric Rogell on our show when we've had these failed guest attempts repeatedly. So Ryan, give us the update on how did we get Eric on our show?
Well, we've been scrambling around trying to find guests and get guests lined up. And, a good thing to do is to check your email. And I actually checked our email for the first time in a few weeks. And I was like, wow, this guy's been emailing us. He wants to be on the show. So that's not a case in point that you should probably check your email a little bit more often. But Eric reached out to us, and it seems as if he's written the book specifically for the podcast, Matt, because the book he's got, it's right up our alley, right? So, Eric, we're really pumped to be able to hear a little overview of the book, some tidbits, tips, and tricks that you've got on there, kind of what it's all about, because, of course, we want people to eventually get the book and be able to experience it for themselves.
Yeah, it's and I appreciate that, and thank you for that. The book came about, and I will tell you, Matt, we had a little bit of conversation before we jumped on, and I know you had some guests bail on you and some people that have kind of held out. And like I told you guys, ask me anything, wide open. So you guys, if you want to dig deep into my life, my story, the book, my work, any of that, man, I am happy to dive into it. So the book came about, really, it's part of my journey. So when the title Lions Raised as Lambs, actually a buddy of mine came up with that title because so many men, and I think starting with my generation, moving down through the generations, it became so normal for divorce, right? And so fathers were moving out of the house. My parents got divorced when I was, I want to say 12, maybe 11 or 12. And I kind of lost that masculine guide, right? And then from there, I was raised by mama. And my mother raised me, the big joke is I always say she raised me like a veal. I had to be very soft and tender and not get bumped or bruised. I had she kept me in a little box. But it's kind of close to the truth. My mom lived in fear. And in the book, I talk about raising a young man either one of two ways. You can only raise him in a culture of fear, which is what I was raised in, or a culture of courage. So the fear that I was raised in, my mom was an anxious person, fearful person, and she was convinced everything was going to kill me or make me sick or come after me. And so the best thing to do was just to be very quiet. Don't stand out. Don't be bold. Stay inside, read. I did a ton of reading when I was a kid, which fortunately led me to writing. But I did a lot of reading as a kid. I was an indoor boy when I was younger. And I got to tell you guys, you're fitness guys and you're athletic and you get what it's like when you're like that. And then you're told to sit quietly for hours and hours on end. I got very angry. So I was a really angry young man. Matt, we talked about this a minute ago. when you were talking about men out there suffering, and we say they're silent sufferers. And I know I was, because I didn't know at that age where to put that anger, right? So it would just kind of bubble over and burst out at inappropriate times. I would lash out a little bit. And it was fine when I was young and smaller, but when I started getting into my teens and I got taller than mom and bigger than mom, these outbursts, she was frightened of them. So then it became, don't be angry, don't show anger, you've got to stay calm. And that made me more angry.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was. And, I looked for positive male role models my whole life. Fortunately or unfortunately, I found some bad ones, and I learned some things not to do from them. And then I found some that were good role models. I got involved in martial arts when I went to college. So in my late teens, I got involved in martial arts, found out that I loved it. Mom was always worried about me getting bumped or bruised or breaking bones and that kind of thing. And what I found was when I got involved in martial arts, I loved getting bumped and bruised and that kind of thing. And just getting in there and rolling around and having a good time and letting that side of me out. It's the lion side of me, the beast, the lion. And so many of us were taught to suppress that. So I, found those good men and went on a path, and I won't get into the whole journey, but ended up in some work. It's called Self-Discovery, Life Mastery, and it was created by a man named Rob James. And Rob's probably one of the most enlightened people I know. And then he has a mentor named Harry Palmer, who's even more enlightened. And learning from Rob and the men that he grew up with, I was able to get back on the path. So Rob was raised in a culture of courage. He, at age 9, his father was an attorney, a prominent attorney in town. And one of his good friends was a cattle rancher. And he knew that the cattle rancher could raise Rob into a man better, a masculine, strong, tough, courageous man, better than he could. He was busy building a law practice and making his fortune. So Rob went to work for a guy he had the best name for a rancher. His name was Turner Coates. So Rob learned everything from Turner Coates. And I live in South Florida, and Rob grew up on the Treasure Coast of Florida, and that's where there's a lot of cattle ranchers. Ponce de Leon brought some cattle through into St. Augustine when he discovered Florida, and a lot of those ranches are still here. So Turner had learned how to live off the land, how to be tough, how to be a man from Seminole Indians and from other good men, other good ranchers. So he had this great raising, and he imparted that on Rob. I had never had anything like this in my life. It was being raised by my mom, a lot of feminine around me, New York City. So very like metropolitan area, very, everybody wanted to dress well and look well. Didn't really have a lot of outdoor experience, which is a big part of my life now, but didn't have it then. And I meet Rob, and I'm like, holy man, this is the most masculine man I know. Now understand something. Rob's a beast, but he's also extremely tapped into his feminine side, the lover, the heart that we talk about. So he's got that warrior. So in our work, we have the 4 foundational archetypes: the warrior, the lover, the king, the hero. And the king is the man who has the warrior and the lover fully integrated. You operate from both sides. You're a complete man. You can't be just a warrior. You can't be just a lover. So Rob was very much a warrior, had to learn his heart side, his lover side. I was very much the lover feminine, had to learn my warrior side, my lion side. And so Rob became a mentor of mine and really started guiding me on the path. And in our conversations and learning about how I grew up and how everything was, we came up with the idea to write the book together, Lions Raised as Lambs. And the book starts talking about everything we've been talking about here, guys, about what's going on in society with men, how we feel that our masculinity is being snuffed out. And it's just a natural, beautiful part of us. I always say that masculinity is not toxic. It's just misunderstood, misused, and mistaught. We've got to get back to good men guiding good men. And so that's kind of what the book is about. And it really, I talk about all these things going on in society in the introduction to the book, and then it gets into an allegory. And it is the story of a young lion cub whose parents are killed. He is raised by a flock of sheep, by mama's sheep. And he's raised to suppress his roar and not use his claws or his teeth, not go hunting, but actually just eat like vegetation. And he feels this is wrong. And he's discovered by an old warrior lion who then takes him on the path and shows him the way of what I call lionhearted leadership, the warrior and the lover to live as a king. And that's where the book takes us. And I'll tell you guys, I've had it's a short book. You can read it in a couple hours. But I've had men come to me and tell me, you told my story. And I just started weeping when I was reading this because it just told me so much about me. And I'll just tell them, listen, brother, it's all of our story. Slightly different flavors, but there's things in there that we can all relate to as men, and especially men who have been raised to kind of deny that side of us. So in my work, what we do is we make the warrior, the lion, the masculine, it's beautiful, it's empowering, but then supporting it with the lover and the heart, the feminine side of us, because we all have both, right? Masculine and feminine doesn't mean male or female. It's just the energies and ideals we have inside of us. And when you could tap into both freely and fully and align them working for you, which is the king archetype, man, life is just so beautiful, so amazing. And I look back at how I was raised, and people will say, and you might ask this question yourselves, did you hate your mom? Do you blame your mom? And I would say, for a good part of my life, yeah, the answer was yes. I blamed her for doing things to me, for treating me a certain way, for making me weak. All of those things are bullshit. She didn't do anything to me. And I got to a point where I could forgive my mother and just love her. She was doing what she thought was best for me. She was just trying to protect me. Wasn't trying to hurt me, wasn't trying to do anything to me. So I'll tell you guys that are listening, when you can do that, and same with my father. I blamed him for the divorce and leaving and abandoning us and all that other nonsense. And when I really got into my dad's shoes and got into mom's shoes and really took a deep look and got honest, we have a thing in my work, we call it the Sacred Seven core values. And it's courage, honesty, integrity, commitment, duty, honor, and love. And the first three are the most important. You have to have the courage to be ruthlessly honest with yourself so that you can take ownership of things that have happened in your life. Then you can live in integrity. So I look at, I think what mom did was perfect. If I hadn't have gone through what I went through, I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys today and telling this story. It's part of what made me who I am. And I now have contrast. I've seen both sides. I grew up in this side. Now I live in this side. And I can see how much more comfortable I am in one. And I think it gives me a unique ability to work with men, and especially young men, and kind of guide them on the path. And that's been my journey and what I feel is my purpose. So that's kind of some groundwork, guys. And then I will love to answer anything that's coming up for you right now.
Well, Eric, I mean, I'm sitting here. I've had so many chills back to back here that I'm going to have a hard time kind of going back now and trying to throw out the questions of each stage. I'm thinking of Ryan here that, he's shared his testimony of growing up in a similar situation, it sounds. And so I've probably got some questions for Ryan too. I feel like we could make this a 10-part series here. For the audience that aren't watching this on YouTube, Ryan and I didn't really know Eric's story. And so as soon as, I finished work about 17 minutes before we jumped on, and I come home on two wheels, I jump on. I'm the first one in the studio here. And, for those of you that are watching I've always got this cutoff, that's my style. That's who I am. I hate shoes. I hate sleeves. And I jump on and I'm like, this Eric dude is jumping on in a cutoff, with a hat. I'm like, this is my man right here, like he's an author, a best-selling author. And here he is with a cutoff. I'm like, I like this guy already, right? How close are you in South Florida? Like, let's get together and hang out, right? So I'm pumped just to have a guest that we didn't know jump on and just have the authenticity within yourself to feel confident enough to get on in a cutoff. I'm not saying all our future guests have to be in a cutoff for me to like you,
Yeah.
But
But
I
man,
immediately,
I'm the same way. Like I get up, I throw on, I don't like sleeves. I'm always going like this because I feel like it's, constricting. I don't like sleeves. I throw a hat on if I'm not, going anywhere. And I figured you guys wouldn't mind. And I just be real. This is how I was feeling today. So just jumped on and said, I saw some of your videos and what you were doing. I'm like, these guys will appreciate it. It's who I am every
well,
day, you know?
yeah, I wanted to point it out for those that aren't necessarily watching because to me it's like, wow, we're dialed in already. This is a divine appointment, and that's not to get into your story more, but can you give me a little bit of background on how did it play out with regards to you shifting that focus, that frustration that you felt you had towards your mom? When did that shift? I don't know the story. Did you get married? Did you have kids? Give me a little bit of that to help me understand that timeline.
Sure, sure. So I moved out. I grew up in New York, like I mentioned, and I moved to South Florida when I was 24. And, mom was real upset. Part of it was, I think there was an escape a little bit. There was a little bit of running away, trying to get out and be on my own, be my own man. And when I got down here, I loved it. I loved being on my own. And there was a point then where it was more, I was outside of it and I could look at it and I was like, wow, mom really did a number on me, man. I am like afraid of everything. And there was a lot of years of blame. I got married, my wife, and we were no longer together. So this was years ago. I got married in 99, I think. My mom had passed in 98. She had what they call a first and fatal heart attack while getting dressed for work in the morning. She was 58 years old, had a massive heart attack. Looking at it now, I think she was just heartbroken. I think it's no coincidence. It was her heart that gave out. I think she had been heartbroken when my dad left. She never remarried, never really dated anybody else for years and years and years. And I think she was just heartbroken. And, I had resist on her. I didn't go up and visit her as much as I could have. One of the biggest regrets that I carry, and I'm getting emotional right now just remembering it, is she called me the night before she died or the day before she died because she was supposed to come up and visit myself and my fiance at the time. And my fiance had a 16-month-old daughter who my mom and she just got along amazing. My mom loved this little girl. I love this little girl. And she was coming down to visit us for a week. And I think she wanted to call and talk about something. And I was too busy. And I'm just like, Ma, I don't have time for you. Like I still had that. Like, I don't want you mothering me. I don't want you lording over me. And I just blew her off. And I got the phone call the next morning from my brother. He found her. My brother found her and she had passed. She had the heart attack. She was getting dressed. She was on her bedroom floor. And I live with that guilt. I got to tell you guys, I lived with that guilt for a long time of like, wow, I didn't have 2 minutes to talk to my mother. And now I can't. Now I can't. So, fast forward years later, guys, and I'm in this work and I'm, the self-discovery work, and I'm really discovering myself to be, 100% honest. And I look back at mom and I was like, man, she just loved me so much. And, I was her oldest and she wanted to protect me and she wanted me to be, safe. And that's the only way she knew how to do it because that's how she felt safe. She didn't have any tools and she just did the best she could with what she had available to her. And so when you look at it from that, I mean, that's just love. That's just pure love. And if I give her love and I felt her love, then there's really no way I can blame her or hold her accountable for anything and even say that she did anything to me. She was my mother. She loved me and I loved her. And, I talk to her now. I mean, like I said, for a long time, I felt horrible because I felt guilty that I didn't speak to her. And there's so much I wanted to say to her. And I've done that now. I mean, I do it in consciousness, if you want to put it that way. And I talk to mom and I let her know how much I love her and how much I appreciate everything that she did for me. Like I said, it makes me emotional just feeling that. But I really do appreciate everything she did for me. And so it probably took, into my 40s, maybe into 50s to really fully forgive her and my father. My dad passed away. I want to say, I can never remember, but I want to say like 6 or 7 years ago. And he was He was sick with cancer. There was so much I wanted to say to him because I had missed it with my mom, but he wasn't as coherent the last time that I saw him. He asked me the same question over and over. So I knew he really wasn't getting it, but I still said some things that I wanted to say. There were things that I didn't get to. But I looked at what my dad did. And I'll tell you, when you said, did you get married? Did you have kids? So I've been married twice. And first wife had a daughter. Second wife, we couldn't have children. And now I live with my girlfriend, and she has two grown daughters who I just call my stepdaughters. Love them to death. They're amazing, amazing women. And I look back at being 30 something years old with a 2-year-old daughter, and looking back on it now, my dad had to give up on his dreams because his father passed away young. He was in college. He had to drop out of college, take over the family business. And he didn't really get to do what he wanted to do. And, funny enough, he was majoring at University of Miami. He majored in radio and television. He wanted to be a sportscaster. He wanted to be a radio DJ. So funny now that I've done podcasts, and kind of fulfilled that through him. But I don't think my father ever wanted to get married and settle down and have a family. I really don't. In his senior year of high school, he was voted most likely to be the next Hugh Hefner, which, of course, is the founder of Playboy. And my dad was a good-looking guy. He was an athlete. He was accomplished in many areas. And I really think getting married at 24 and having me at 26 was not really his life plan. And so it took me till I was in that situation, and even more deeply in the more recent years, to realize, holy shit, Dad, this was not what he wanted. And that's okay. And did he blame us as kids for, having us and all that? Maybe. But that's on him, not on me. I love him for that, and I forgive him for that. And it breaks my heart sometimes to think he didn't get to live the life he wanted to live. He lived an amazing life. He really did, but it wasn't the purpose that he felt he had. So, guys, in looking at those things, that's kind of where I am now. And I find myself reminding myself to forgive more and more and more. And coming on shows like yours and getting asked that question, I really appreciate, because it gives me another opportunity to go even deeper into it, get a little more emotional about it, feel those feelings, and move forward with it.
My question now, I've got so many questions for you. I don't want to cut Ryan off. I know he's got questions too, but I'm kind of looking at Ryan here, and he's just sort of sitting there. And Ryan always takes a little bit of a nudge sometimes, but I can see the wheels turning in his head because his story seems like you're telling Ryan's story, and I'm sitting here keeping my own tears back because my mum and dad have passed. So my question would be for Ryan, how does this hit you with what he's sharing?
Yeah, it definitely hit me kind of hard because, my parents split up when I was about 8 or 9. And of course, I went to live with my mom and had the same sort of thing that you're describing now to me. Say it again, you call it a, a culture of fear. Is that what it was?
Correct. Yeah. Culture of fear
Yeah.
versus a culture of courage. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we lived in a lot of that culture of fear. And it was, I've also heard it termed, I became like the surrogate parent with her, living alone with my mom, to where like my later part of my childhood and into my adolescence and teenage years were in that culture of fear, that surrogate parenting. And, it didn't allow me to necessarily be the child and be the normal functioning teen that I would have been, that, in a non-broken home, right? So to hear you come out and say that right off the bat, it's like, wow, that's kind of where I was as well. And I was also a very angry kid, and nobody really understood why. Everybody just said I should have been a lawyer. I always wanted to argue and argue and argue. And,
Yeah.
parents and grandparents were like, oh, he's going to be a great lawyer someday, great lawyer. Of course, I never went that direction. I was just angry. But yeah, it's interesting.
I'll just say something to that, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but what I get from that, and I mentioned this in the book, is you were angry, I was angry, right? So I lashed out. I don't know how you expressed your anger. But one of the things I always tell people is when our masculinity is suppressed, and you felt it, so you're saying the same thing, like you were raised in the culture of fear, the masculine side of you was kind of repressed, and it makes you angry. And then you lash out. And that's when people go, see, masculinity is toxic. We need to keep it down. That's because you won't. And I'm like, it's a circular reasoning. And it just becomes a loop. It becomes a doom loop, right? Suppress masculinity. Well, that makes us angry. Then we lash out and they go, well, angry. Then see, look, masculinity is dangerous. We need to suppress it. And then we get angry and it just keeps going around and around and around. So I would just ask you, how does it feel now to just express that and just be okay with it and be honest with it and go, look, here's how I grew up. Doesn't have to define me for the rest of my life. I can write my own story going forward.
Right. Yeah. It is kind of freeing to think about it that way, to where I don't need to be angry at my mom and blame her for these things and, hold her to that. Cause like you said, she was just doing the best she could and she had the tools that she had and that was it. But man, it's definitely, I lashed out a lot at home. I was a kind of I would be like a straight A student, honor student, perfect kid at school. But then when I got home, I was like the devil child, just constantly getting in trouble, fighting with my mom and even my dad. And, just being a little brat, basically, was my form of lashing out through those years.
For me, it was a little different. I was the same thing, straight A student, because my intellect, my knowledge, my smartness is what got me through as a kid, right? My mom was proud of me. She would brag about it. But when I got home, I kept my rage inside because I wanted to be the good boy for mom. I didn't want to upset her anymore. Like, she was always, like I said, heartbroken. And so I had to be the good boy and not, you know, rattle her cage or shake anything up. I had to keep everything calm and quiet, keep my brother in line. My brother was very much like you, Ryan, my younger brother, Ron. He's great. But when he was young, he was a terror. And so I was like always with him, trying to keep him, like, again, being another parent, keeping him from making mom crazy. But I would also ask you, Ryan, how does it what are some of the strengths that you have now because of how your mom raised you and how you were, and
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the strengths that I attribute, my attention to detail and it's a little bit of a perfectionist nature and, fiscal responsibility with money. And we were always worried about money growing up. That was a big topic, a big thing. So now I'm always looking at bank statements and pinching pennies and I think I developed a lot of strengths out of that, even though it was a time that I was, not feeling so well and not acting so well, but probably forged a few things in me that I carry to this day, right?
yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And again, Matt, to your question earlier, where did I kind of come out of that feeling that resist on my mom and dad, blaming them and everything? And, one of the I talked about the sacred seven core values a minute ago, and the one right before love is honor. And so I've done some, I'll do some trips with men. We'll do adventure trips. I'll take them up into the mountains or the woods, and we'll hike and whitewater raft and do, axe throwing and all kinds of stuff, and kind of get these stories out. Because Ryan, you feel a little better, like just being more honest and open about that, not holding on to some of that stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So yeah, it is for all of us. And you male or female, doesn't matter when you can just let that stuff out, which is why I told you guys beforehand, like, my life's an open book. You can ask me anything because I'll tap into whatever I have to tap into, even if it hurts. Rob is the one that taught me that. But I would say that um, talking about it is something good, and the strengths that we get from it. I know some of the things that I got from both my parents and looking at it. And so when I take these men on these trips, one of the things we do is we talk about our fathers and honoring our fathers. And so many of us have, and I've heard this called, the wounds, the father wounds, that kind of stuff. Well, let's heal those, right? I'm not going to live with it and keep looking at it and picking at it and saying, oh, I got this wound. No, screw that, cowboy up and let's heal this thing. So one of the things I have them do is honor your father. What do you love about him? What'd you learn from him? Which is why I just asked about your mom, what you learned from her. And I had a guy on a trip, very successful guy, attorney, by the way, Ryan, but he was a corporate attorney. His father was a Mexican immigrant, and his father worked his butt off to make sure that his three kids were able to go to college. And this guy that was on the trip was the oldest. And he was, like you said, very successful corporate attorney, very successful. He had never told his father what he appreciated about him. He never honored his father. And he said, happened to be that this trip was right before Father's Day. And he said, next week when I'm home, we're all getting together for my father's place to celebrate Father's Day. And he goes, I'm going to honor him on Father's Day. And he said, they gathered everybody around, had his father in a chair. And he just said, Dad, I just want to tell you how much I love you. And then he just told him the reasons why. You worked hard for us. You sacrificed everything to give us the life that we have. And he went on, and he said he was weeping. He said his father was crying. He had never seen his father cry before. And he said his father just kept repeating over and over in Spanish, I did it for you kids. I did everything for you kids. I did it for the kids. And he said there wasn't a dry eye in the room. And he said, and his sister and brother were very inspired to do the same thing. And then they did it. And it was hugely cathartic for the whole family. And, something that I learned from Rob is honoring men, honoring good people. And every once in a while, I will send somebody a text and I did it with my brother. And he was driving. And I wrote this long text about what I really appreciate him, because we fought like animals when we were kids. And we're good now. But I wrote him this thing about all the things that he's done. And he's done some cool stuff. And I guess he had it on voice, he was driving, so he played the voice thing to read the text. He said, I had to pull over. I had tears in my eyes. What the hell, man? So when we can honor other people, like especially our parents, it's incredibly freeing, and it allows us to just let go of so much of this stuff that we've held on to that hurts, right? Because it's painful. We can let it go. And that's one of the things that I had when I wrote the book. Was the ending of the book. I'm not going to give it away because I'd love you guys to buy it and read it. But, during the young lion's training, he resents his sheep mama sheep for doing, and not doing this for him. But there's honor at the end and how much he loves her. And for me, and you guys can hear in my voice, I'm getting emotional again. It was how I honored my mother and how I let her know that I love and appreciate everything she did for me. So
Yeah, I'd
really
like to.
bring that up to you guys. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, no, I just didn't want to cut you off there, but again, man, we could be here all weekend, into the next week, and I've got so much to sort of, oh my goodness, unpack here. But I'm looking at this, and I left Australia for the first time back in '98, and I think there was this sadness, with my mum realizing, man, he's a traveler. Like I was the number 5, I was the last kid, and we were tight. I'd spent a lot of time with mum, and I loved every minute of it. And fast forward to the last time I was in Australia, and I was going through a divorce at the time, and there was a possibility during that visit to Australia that maybe I was meant to move back home to Australia, and there was this very small window of mum having a tough time. Dad had already passed, but there was this pocket of time where I was in the middle of my own divorce and trauma, and felt, man, should I stay here in Australia and be mum's caregiver? And, those that have watched the earlier stories know that I didn't stay, but I have always felt that the last time I was there, maybe I should have stayed. I'm going to break down here, but maybe I should have stayed and cared for her in her final years, right? So there's always that regret that I didn't. Now, had I stayed, I wouldn't have gotten married again and had kids. At least not to my current wife and not had my current kids. There could have been another wife and kids. But now that my girls are 5 and 4, of course, you can't imagine life without them, right? So I look back, and it's almost like, man, even in my mum's final days, months, after that visit and into the time that she finally passed, I remember the time after that visit, I actually took my future wife, my current wife, Heather, I took her back to Australia because I wanted my wife, or future wife, we were engaged, and I wanted my wife to meet my mum. I knew my mum didn't have a long time, and I'd already made that decision not to stay and be her carer, but I wanted my mum to see that I got through a divorce, or I was moving on. And I remember my mum, as much as her mind may not have been sharp I still think she knew because she took my wife, close and you're my fiance at the time and said, "You've got a good one here." Now, she loved my first wife too. So that's not to say she didn't love her too, but I think there was this part of mum that was almost saying, "Hey, I understand that you've got to get on with your life and it's not here with me. It's okay." But it still breaks my heart that I didn't stay. Can you share a little bit about what Ryan has an opportunity here with? Because just last week he shared how important his mum has been because she packed everything up and moved to be with him and help Erica and the baby. Can you just speak to him a little bit about how important it is for him? And obviously what you went through is heartbreaking. I'm sad to hear that that happened to you too. So can you speak to him a little bit on how much value he's got right there? He doesn't even understand it.
Yeah, and I'll say to you too, Matt, like you said, heartbreaking, and it is, and it's something that I would just say, just feel it. And for me, it was when I stopped trying to hold it in, deny it, say it wasn't there, toughen up, all that kind of stuff. Listen, I've seen some of the most masculine men I know, the toughest men I know, break down and cry. We on several occasions learn to do that and just feel that emotion. So Matt, I mean, I know you're kind of going through it with, feeling into your mom, and it was the same thing for me. Like I just couldn't believe she was gone. And I beat myself up for so long for not answering that call. And I look at everything's perfect. If you look at the world and the universe as everything is perfect, and there's a reason it happened. And it led me to this, led me to where I am. And Matt, it will lead you to where you are, and just feel that emotion and be okay with it. Let it out. Talk to your mom. And I would say this, Ryan, you too, talk to them, whether they're here or not. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them how much you appreciate them. Honor them from love. And that will heal itself.
My follow-up to you is to speak to Ryan. Obviously, his mum has packed up and moved down there. How does he battle with the challenges that he'll have running through his brain of, hey, my mum packed up to be here, but my dad didn't? Does that fuel it? Does it make it worse? Does it make it better? What do you see there as the challenges? Because obviously our parents have both passed, but his is still alive, but it's somewhat estranged. So
Yeah. The thing that I always tell everybody is this, in order, and just look at this, in history. In history, how does the king become the king? Or how does a prince become a king?
father dies.
Father dies, right? And that's in a lot of stories and a lot of legends. And if you look, like I'm a huge comic book fan. I was an indoor boy growing up. So I grew up a huge nerd, man, and I'm proud of that. I love superhero stuff. I love science fiction. I love fantasy stories. And when you look at them in a lot of these comic books and stories, the hero is orphaned. A lot of the time, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Harry Potter, you can come up with any of these. And to me, I believe the reason is, and great man named Joseph Campbell wrote a book. He was a mythology professor out in California, and he wrote the book The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He also wrote The Power of Myth, which is another amazing, amazing book, and he studied myths. And the reason why he said it was the hero with a thousand faces was because every story is every story is every story. The hero of every story is the hero of every story. Now, we're the hero of our own story. It goes within us as well. And so I always tell men, in order for you to become the king, you've got to kill daddy. Now, that doesn't mean literally, number one, and it doesn't even mean metaphorically. What it means is in your mind. So Ryan, right now, married with kids, correct?
Yeah, we've got a 10-week-old here at home.
Awesome. Congratulations. So if you look at it, you just started your own kingdom.
Yeah.
You are the king of your own kingdom. So now you have the queen mother and you have the old king, but you got to kill them off. You are the king of your own kingdom. So does that mean that you don't speak to them and you don't acknowledge them? No, not at all. What it means is that you no longer live in their kingdom. They have no power over you. Right? You're a grown man. You started your own family. You're your own king. You have your own kingdom. And in your own psyche, it means, well, my dad is just another man. He's a great man. We can be friends. We can hang out or not. Same with mom. We can have that relationship. And I learned this from Rob. It was mind blowing to me, but he basically told his parents, I'm a man now. We can be friends, same level, man to man. I'll have conversation with you, woman to man with mom, but you're not going to treat me as your little boy anymore. I'm not your little boy. I'm a grown man starting my own family. I have my own kingdom. And I never forgot that. And that's kind of how I look at it now with, like, relatives of mine, aunts, uncles, that kind of thing. I have an aunt, I love her to death. She tried to step in and be mom. And I'm like, I'm 35. When my mom passed, I was like in my mid 30s. I'm 35 years old. I don't need another mother. I'm good. Right. Now, in relationships, I tended to date mommy archetype women. That's another whole episode we could do, guys. But Ryan, I would say for you, look, the best thing that you can do is be the king of your kingdom. Mom is down here. Great. It's a decision she made. Dad didn't. That's great. It's a decision he didn't. Mothers are more like that. Oh, there's a baby now. I have to come help with the baby. And that's wonderful. And I feel that for her. She loves you guys, but you're the king of your kingdom. And the one thing that I say in all my work, and, I do men's groups and, like I said, on the trips and everything. And when I do coaching one-on-one is, if it's good for the king, it's good for the kingdom. So Ryan, you got to make the decision. What's good for me? Because then it'll be good for the kingdom. And a lot of guys get, no, I do everything for my family. I work so hard for my kids and I do all of this. Great. But if the king is sick and miserable and unhappy and broke, how does that translate to the kingdom? Kingdom is going to be sick and miserable and broke and all of that. But when the king is happy and fulfilled and wealthy and healthy and thriving, how does the kingdom look? And so that's got to be you, Ryan. And I say this to all men that are listening, and women too, but all men that are listening. You're the king of your own kingdom. You've created it, your family, your thing, your business, whatever it is for you, that's your kingdom. Take care of you first is actually taking care of them. You have to be good. So Ryan, it's decision. It's just like, look, I've had to do this in my life where it's like, hey, I appreciate that you're here to try to help, but okay, time to go. Right? And that doesn't mean forever. That just means that day, like, okay, we've had enough, time to go. I've got this. So I don't know, how does that feel, Ryan? Like, to feel into like you're the king of your own kingdom now.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I like it. It's kind of brings a visual to the feelings that we feel day in and day out, and especially with the newborn baby here at home, we're just kind of going feeding by feeding, hour by hour here, and so, but thinking about it in that term kind of expands the vision a little bit for me. So that's good. I like that.
Yeah. And then listen, the warrior side of us, this decisiveness is a warrior trait. And I'll tell you, it's a very attractive trait to women, because I've done a lot of talks at women's groups too. And one of the things that I find is, I'll say, how many of you have your husband comes home and you're like, what do you want for dinner, babe? And he goes, oh, I don't care, whatever you want. Well, what movie do you want to watch tonight? Oh, I don't care, whatever you want to watch. Where do you want to go for dinner? Whatever you want. Like, you're thinking you're making it easy on her. And I said, well, what if he just came home and said, hey, babe, listen, I had an idea. I decided we're going out for dinner. I want you to wear that red dress that I love on you. We're going to go to this restaurant. We're going to do something afterwards. Then we're coming home. And they're like, oh my God, I would just melt into his arms, because decision is masculine. It's warrior. It's part of who we are. Women typically don't like to make all the decisions. So I will tell you that, because you were raised the same way I was the nice guy, wanted to make mommy happy. I wanted to, all of that kind of stuff. So I didn't rock the boat and there was no conflict. And I would let them decide, because then I was being nice and they were deciding. But I will say, in your life, in your family, Ryan, decide. All right, I've decided this is what we're going to do. And is your mom. So mom, listen, great. I love having you here today. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you, Monday or whatever it is. I'm going to play with the kids for a little while now. We just want to have just be decisive. It's okay. And especially when it comes from love. Mom, we love you. I'm decided, hey, we're going to end this. We love you. We'll see you on Monday, versus, hey, mom, get out of here. I've had enough of you. I can't stand the sight. See, you know what I mean? It's like, right. People do that stuff, so it comes up. So what I'm saying to you is decisive, right? It's one thing us nice guys, us people pleasers don't do enough of, is just decide and then say, here's what it is and go. And look, it might sting for a minute, but they'll get it. And it's for you and your family, you and your kingdom. So that bring anything up, or how's that feel?
No, that's good. I like that. Yeah, that's definitely something that's been a topic over well, I'll say over the years, but even closer over the last months with her moving down and being close and being available. She just babysat for us last night, and it was great. So, yeah, it's great to have her here and be able to lean on her a little bit during this time.
Sure. And have you told her that?
No, I haven't. So that's
See,
that's
there
part
you
of the
go.
honor thing, right?
Right. Right. Do that. And listen, I had a client who, had a thing with his father, and his father was going through a rough time, and he and his father really didn't have a great relationship when he was growing up. It's better now. It's one of the things we coached him on. But one of the things I told him was to honor him, like that kind of stuff, like honor him. And he said, my dad's not that kind of guy. Like, he just doesn't say, I love you. He just assumes he loves you. Like, he doesn't say it. And he goes, it would feel weird saying I love you to my dad. I go, well, what if you just wrote him a text and just said, Dad, listen, I was just thinking, I really appreciate bing, 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 bing. And he's like, you know what? That I can do. And he did it. And he was like, I was amazed at my father's response. I thought he was going to say to me, like, stop being a pussy and why are you writing this stupid shit? Like, you know what I mean? Because that's the kind of dad he was. But he said, my father came back and he was like, wow, thank you. So honor your mom, Ryan. I mean, she's down there. She did you know, I'm going to say she did it for you. Knowing what I know, she's doing it for herself too.
Yeah.
Right? She loves you guys and she gets a lot out of it. She's doing it for herself. Nothing wrong with that. But honor her a little bit. And you'll feel better too. Trust me.
Yeah,
You will feel
for sure.
better. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so powerful what you're saying, and I'm applying it to my own home. And I don't want to start a whole nother episode here, but I'm trying to think through my own marriage, and we've shared this through 21, now 22 episodes. I've definitely gone through a three-pronged attack on my, physical side, surgery, recovery. My marriage has, suffered, and that relationship's taken its toll. And of course, financially, it's been devastating to us. And so I'm kind of thinking, wow, how can I apply this mindset? Not as a cheat code, not as something like, let me do this, and the missus doesn't know, whether she listens to these or not. It's irrelevant. We're doing this for the community. And I'm just thinking through some of these things because although my parents were married for 100 years and, that's all they each had, until they parted. And, you know, I didn't grow up with what you guys experienced, but I am falling into that same category of, trying to please the home and trying to move the needle on the marriage side when, in some way, shape, or form, it doesn't have to come out as anger, but it can come out as leadership. It can come out as being the king of the kingdom. And I'm super pumped to dig in, and I want to read your book. I want to, as soon as I get off here, I'm going to, be checking that out. And, obviously we're going to stay in touch. And I feel like there's another episode coming up out of this, very, very shortly afterwards, because
Sure.
we've got so many directions we could take this. But I already feel empowered with just a little bit of direction you've given me, because I've had a lot of anger issues, and, I felt, abandoned during this time in my marriage. And so I've really struggled with that, but I can put into place the things that you're talking about, even though I didn't grow up in a broken home, right? So there's a lot of people out there that say, well, my parents were together forever, right? How does it apply to me? Well, it applies to me. So here I am, right?
Yeah.
And I'm super pumped to be just putting those things into action moving forward. And I think obviously you've got a lot of experience with this. So, we need to be staying in touch here and getting another episode out of this.
Absolutely, 100%. And listen, I would be my honor to do that. I would love it because I didn't even realize how much time we've gone through together. But I do want to say something that I think is really important, especially for the men that are listening, right? The men that are listening, the three of us, we didn't know each other. You guys were, friends, you do the show, but we didn't know each other. And you had mentioned to me that some of your guests don't get really open and real. And I'm like, it's been hammered into me for the last decade about getting open and real. But when you look at it in action, this is three men having a conversation, getting real about how we grew up, being okay with getting a little emotional. I think, it's good for men to get emotional. That's why that lover side of us is so important. don't lead with it, don't live in it all the time, but be that warrior, but allow yourself to feel the emotions. All three of us have felt that today, and how powerful it is and how crucial and important it is as men that we have conversations like this. Listen, going down, to the sports bar, having a couple beers, watching the game, I love that stuff. And it's great. And I have friends that I do that with. I much prefer this, what we did here today. I much prefer having real conversation, authentic, everybody get vulnerable. And I call it vulnerable from strength, which means you're just open and honest about what's going on with you. It's not the whiny, victim-y, look what happened to me stuff, but it's like, hey, this is how I grew up and this is how it makes me feel. What can I do about it? And this is what we've lost in our society. I believe this is what we've lost. We've lost that, where men come together and just have the courage to be honest so we can be in integrity, right? And just be guides for each other, be shoulders for each other. And, iron forges iron. This is what we're doing. We're getting everybody together. So men, I would encourage you, find some good men that you align with and have these kind of conversations. I have a group I run every Thursday night. It's called the Bold Men Brotherhood. It's Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. We just had one yesterday. We have just in-depth conversations like this for an hour. And so, something like that's interesting, reach out to me. If you want to do something in your own area, if there are men that but keep the conversation going. Be open, be honest, be real. Hold space for each other, meaning I'm allowing you to speak your truth. I'm allowing you to speak from the heart, and I'm not going to judge you and ridicule you or put you down. I mean, notice we didn't do any of that today. It wasn't like, oh, Ryan, yeah, you were raised like, I went through that my whole life. You were raised like a pussy. You're so soft. You're this. I rebelled against that, which is what made it difficult for me once I tapped into my warrior, my beast, to then tap into my heart and my lover. Because I was like, no, screw that. I'm not going back. But it was from strength. And there was a big difference, a huge difference. And when I would train with Rob and I would just see him, this big beast of a man, just something make him emotional and just him let it out. And it was okay. Then you move forward. And so I would encourage men out there to do that, have these conversations. And guys, I honor you too for having this podcast and having these conversations and allowing me to come on here and just be a part of it for an hour.
Yeah, I'm moved, I'm touched, and I'm picturing three kingdoms in your story where the three kings get together, once a week, and they're not getting together to find out, where is your kingdom weak? Is the gate going to be left open a certain day of the week so I can come in and, rape and pillage and take away, right? It's not that old school mindset of, taking over the next kingdom, over the mountain range. Instead saying, hey, my kingdom's not doing great. What have you found works for your kingdom? Because I'd like to put that in my kingdom and benefit from it, and my people can as well. And I'm pumped to just go into this week with that story. So
it's just wisdom, Matt. It's just sharing wisdom. We all have wisdom. Wisdom is just knowledge that's been increased through experience. We have battle scars that we've earned. I know I have a ton of battle scars and I share them. But listen, if it helps you not have to go through what I went through for that many years, if you can pop it like that and move. And I love your analogy of the three kingdoms between the three of us. And look, I'm a king. Matt, you're a king. Ryan, you're a king. And I'm not trying to be you, Matt. I can't be you. And Ryan, I can't be you. And you guys can't be me. So I can honor you and respect you and acknowledge you for the kings that you are. And if you can do the same to me. Now, listen, we might have some friendly competition here and there. You know what I mean? And like who can, whatever it might be, something in fitness or in, episode downloads or something. We might have a little friendly competition, but we're not here to tear each other down. I'm not here to destroy you and destroy your kingdom. And that, Matt, so I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that's so important, especially today, because the only person who can create a king is another king. And we've got to build up kings and kingdoms so that this can thrive. And it's generational, right? Ryan, you're a father now. You impart this on your children, they will impart it on their children, and it will go down the lines. That's why it's so important. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Matt. Definitely get your kingdoms together, everybody.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
love it.
Well, Eric, it's been awesome having you on the show. We'll definitely link your book here in the show notes. But where can folks find you? Are you on social media as well?
I am. I'm on social media, so I'm the only Eric Rogell on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter or X. I'm on there. Reach out to me. I tell everybody, just go find me, have the courage, be bold, reach out, say hello. Obviously, the book, Lions Raised as Lambs, there's lionsraisedaslambs.com, which, there's a link to Amazon, and you can also jump on my mailing list, get a bunch of stuff, some articles I've written, some things I think you'll really appreciate. And then I have a challenge for men. It's a 30-day challenge called the Lionheart Challenge. And it is all the stuff we talked about in an email every day for 30 days. You get a new mission every morning, a new challenge based around the warrior, lover, king, hero, the sacred 7 core values, paying attention, all of that. And the first 5 days are free. So you can go to the lionheartchallenge.com. So that's where to find me, guys. Reach out, jump in. Make the decision, take that first step, go read the book, go join the challenge, whatever it is for you, take that first step.
Love it.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. This has been amazing. I see another episode being scheduled very soon. I'm sure, Ryan, you would concur, but we have just scratched the surface on Eric Rogell, and I'm deeply grateful for what I see as a long future of friendship together. So thank you, and I look forward to the next episode already.
Yeah, I'm same here, guys. I would be honored to do another one. I'm looking forward to it, and I really appreciate you guys having me on and letting me share a little bit.
All right, guys, that's it for this week. We'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys.